was going through a lot of constant unraveling. I constantly change and grow and explore. I think that's part of what I do, my day in, day out, is I'm constantly looking at new information, new ideas, exploring doctrines, and constantly changing what I believe in one way or another. And so I think that was an element that sometimes gave me something to stand on, and other times like took away things I would have stood on before that weren't there anymore. I think it was a really hard time. I felt very rejected, very powerless, very hopeless. I didn't have any friends there. She was from Ireland, so she was Irish. I had no one there. I didn't know anyone. And when I moved to Ireland, the local churches had got together and said, this guy's not welcome, we're not having him. So I'm a controversial person. I understand why they made those decisions and how. But
so she was a church girl too.
Yeah, but I couldn't go to any of their churches. So I couldn't. It was very hard for me to make friends, you know. And I'm quite introverted anyway. And sometimes if you gave me that option, I'd probably function quite well. I wouldn't know how badly I was functioning probably, but I'd get on quite well for a while. So I was very lonely, really struggled. I had some friends across, in the UK or the US that I would talk to, and they were really helpful and kind of pivotal in those times. But yeah, it was a really, really tough time. I think going to therapy really helped me take ownership of what I had to deal with and stuff. So the marriage therapist met with us once, and then I went along on my own to some therapy. But marriage therapist said, "Oh yeah, like this is salvageable. You need to work on this, and you need to work on this." And my wife was like not interested in. She might want to work on herself and develop, but she didn't want to work on the relationship. So she went off, was doing that. But I at least had a list of things of like, oh, these are some flaws in my life. These are some things I can work on. And I'm deeply pragmatic. So for me, I sat down, this was kind of January, February, and the whole thing kind of fell apart August or so. I sat there and was like, well, I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know. My wife had said, look, I'm not sure where I'm at. The discussion where she was like, I'm done, I'm not interested in working on it, that was in August. So at this early stage, she's just like, this isn't working, I think I want a divorce. But basically it sat there and she's like, well, I don't know, I'm not in a mental space to make a good decision right now. Let's give us some time. We'll figure out, when I'm done with my degree. So she was finishing up a master's at that point. And so that was like, okay, well, by August, September, we'll figure out what we're doing. So I'm working hard. I'm going, well, I can only work on me. I can't help her. I can't change her. I can't make her do anything. But I can guarantee that coming out the other end of this, I'm either going to be changed in a positive way that means that I'm going to be a better husband if she wants to work on this, and I'm going to be more equipped to work on this, or she walks away and bails and I'm going to be a better person to deal with that and to process it and to navigate it and hopefully go off and find someone else at some point and be remarried or whatever it looks like. But I did struggle. I struggled a lot. It was a really, really hard kind of 8-month season of my life. Really brutal.
Wow. So once you got the divorce, came back home?
I travel for a living. That's what I do. I travel around and I speak to different groups and do different things. And there was one group in Manchester in England, which isn't somewhere I was familiar with at the point, but I traveled there a lot and spoke there and had really good connections there. I even went there a couple of times a year, especially when I was going through that season. I went over a couple of times just to kind of connect and hang out with some of those people. I wasn't even speaking, but just like, I just want to be around some good people that are healthy and encourage me and give life to me. And so for me, I had a decision. I could go home where my family were, or I could maybe go to this place where there was this community that were healthy. And I just thought, if I go home, I'm just going to stagnate. It's not going to be healthy for me. It's not going to be the right thing, although it's really safe. And so I moved to Manchester, which is where I went and just became a part of that community, that church, the community there. That was really helpful for me. Really helped me kind of work through whatever I needed to work through and kind of come out the other end and go, okay, yeah, I'm okay. It's okay. That was really, really good. So, yeah.
It's interesting because, I know some of your backstory and stuff like that. And so it's like I'm listening to you and you use the term deconstructed in church, and it kind of sounds like you deconstructed in marriage, but each time kind of self-examining yourself, self-examining your beliefs and saying, where do I want to be? How do I want to be? I mean, that's what I just love about you is that you can analyze Phil. Mm-hmm. You can put Phil on the altar here and say, is what Phil's doing right? Do I need that help? And then you go receive that help and information, and then you apply it to your life and you apply it to your marriage. And same with, the grace message and the, what your doctrinal beliefs have changed and shifted. But you've gone through two major deconstructions, one in marriage and one in church. Mm-hmm. Was that timing about the same in kind of this process?
I think it's tough for me because I work with people that are deconstructing. That's my job, is literally day in, day out. I help dozens of people, probably hundreds and hundreds of people a month that are going through this process of deconstructing. And looking at it, it's really interesting because the flip, the switch that flips where they kind of go, oh wow, I'm deconstructing, that feels very overnight in a sense. Mm-hmm. But actually when they have to work it out, that takes a long period of time. For me, I grew up kind of with that mindset of like constantly wanting to change and grow, and that was my mom's amazing input in my life, was like, don't take anything at face value, constantly evaluate, constantly look at everything you believe, question it constantly. If new information presents itself, check, does this change what I believe? Does this change who I am? Does this change what I think is true? And so I was always doing that. Growing up, I've always done that, working through it. So even when I was at ministry school, they gave you prescribed books to read. I would read really contrary books, very contrary books, like hardcore fundamentalists. I'd read really wild progressives. I'd read really charismatic stuff. I would try and read different perspectives. So one of the things I would do, my rule that I've had for probably about 10 years now, is for every book I know I'm going to agree with, I have to read 2 books I think I'm going to disagree with. Wow. And I will not try and break that if I can avoid it. And so I've always done that, because that's how you grow. You don't grow reading books you agree with. It's nice to do, but you don't grow. Well,
that's the problem I see with doctrine, right? Because you can basically only fill these 4 walls with doctrine, because doctrine has a demand of what you should believe about everything, and so you cannot go outside of that doctrine to think anything differently or act anything differently, or so that's interesting that you even challenge yourself, not saying this is one doctrine I'm gonna live under, but I'm gonna gather all of the information together.
But all that to say, though, what is interesting is, on the whole, the people that I do work with, that isn't necessarily the way that they functioned growing up, and it isn't how they thought growing up. And so deconstruction is quite a severe kind of like boom, it kind of happens. And 9 times out of 10, deconstruction correlates to suffering. Usually, for most people in their life, when they start really unraveling something they believe in, it's usually because they've been exposed to some great pain. So Richard Rohr often says it's through great suffering and great love that we change. And so, yes, great love often changes us. Getting married to someone and pursuing loving them better might cause us to question some things we believe and change that, or whatever. Having a kid born, that'll mess with your beliefs and change it, right? It's this beautiful, loving thing. But also having your mother die, having your sister get cancer, having your child born and it has a disability, those kind of things, living with an illness yourself or something, being in a wreck, whatever it is, these are the sort of examples that you hear day in, day out of people that are deconstructing. I was in a huge car wreck, and it just caused me to think, I actually don't really know if I believe what I believe. Well, and, I started to open it up. And so I think whether I'm on a journey constantly of trying to remove some unhealthy beliefs and introduce new ones, this deconstruction, reconstruction, in the moments of suffering I've had in my life, my divorce being a great example, I have probably reevaluated stuff more. I've been pushed to question certain things that I might not have questioned otherwise, or it might have been 10 years before I questioned that one topic, and all of a sudden you're like, no, I want to look into this. I really want to figure out what I believe about, divorce would be probably a good one, right? So I'm going through a divorce. Well, what do I believe about that, right? Is that fair? Is it true? Because when I'm not going through a divorce, I don't really mind what my position on divorce is. It's not really that material to me. And if I have a pretty harsh view on divorce, well, it doesn't affect me. It's maybe harsh for someone else, but not for me. It's very selfish, but we're all selfish beings. We're all driven by our very selfish drive, if we're honest with ourselves.
Right. I think most advice is selfish advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And most of our theology is deeply selfish theology, right? It's the reason that if you go find the average Christian and you said, here's a big picket, you can write on it what you want and you can go picket anything you want, there's a reason they picket homosexuals, because most of us are heterosexual. right? They don't go pick at McDonald's and say gluttony is a sin. Right? Why? Because we all like a double cheeseburger or a Big Mac, right? So so we pick and choose our sins.
Well, the two big sins are abortion and
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because many people in the church are gay, and many people in the church have abortions. It's very common. We just don't talk about it and we hide it. But yeah, you're right, exactly. But generally speaking, it's the hidden sins. It's the sins that we don't struggle with. The one I don't struggle with is the one I'm quite happy to be very vocal about it not being wrong. But as soon as I struggle with it, so you look at a lot of people change their view on homosexuality when their kid comes out as gay, or their sister goes, I'm going to get married to a woman, or whatever, and it's like, oh, I'm going to have to think about this, And people say, oh, you're just being watered down by the world. But the truth is what's actually happening, and that might be a part of it for sure in certain things. But the truth is for the most part, you're just being challenged in an area that you never had to think about before. And you could just accept the party line. But now the party line is going to hurt someone that you love. The party line means I can't talk to my son anymore. Maybe I will just check this, right?